Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we left off verse 29, one more verse, and we complete chapter 7. So we just very quickly summarize the chapter. By now you must know it by heart, because we've been looking at the end part of this chapter for the last couple of weeks. And so I am assuming that you all know now what this chapter is about. And it's as well when we complete any chapter of the Gita that you just go back and summarize the whole chapter, what the whole picture of each chapter is trying to give you. You know, it's entitled The Yoga of Knowledge and Wisdom. And just running through if you look at the Gita at the beginning of each chapter, it's got the topic layout, which is not in any other Gita as such, like laid out that way. So the flow of thought of each verse is broken down. So you understand, sometimes it gets confusing because of the style of the Shastras. They have a flow of thought and then they change the flow of thought. But once you begin to understand the structure, you understand how it's building up, and then it brings you back to a certain state and builds you up. So he stated at the beginning, Krishna stated, he'll give you knowledge and wisdom. How is that so? Anybody, we covered this last week. Anybody quickly tell me, what's the indication there? It says, I'll give you knowledge and wisdom. What did we learn last week? How can that be so? Who was here last week? You want to check your attendance sheet? Are you here? Generally, the overall picture, why does he start with that? What's he saying? Just a sentence. You don't have to elaborate too much. Just want a quick sentence to understand where you're at. So Krishna says, I'll give you knowledge and wisdom. How can he say that? On what basis? What's happening? Anyone?
I'm going to give it a try. I mean, Well, we've been talking about pairs of opposites, so I don't know if that has anything to do with the knowledge that you're referring to.
Okay, that's at the very end. We were talking about pairs of opposites.
Oh, sorry, are you talking about the very end or in general throughout the
No,
chapter?
no, no. At the very end, it's talking. So you're quite right. We covered last week. But what's this question? Krishna at the very beginning says, I will give you knowledge and wisdom. The thing is, how can anybody give you wisdom? It's not possible. Our tradition is you've got to get that wisdom out of yourself. So what's indicative? What's it trying to indicate there? It's first two verses. How does he manage to say that so confidently? Okay, I'm going to give it away. You'll kick yourself. But it means you've got to do a bit more homework if you can't answer this simple question. For yourselves, not for checking. It's nothing like that. For yourselves, to understand your process of growth. So anybody before I go? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You're on mute. Go ahead.
You live yourself by yourself.
Yes. So how is Krishna saying that? That's correct. How is Krishna saying, I'll give you the wisdom? And when we say you lift yourself by yourself.
Well, he's giving us the knowledge.
Yes.
So we're going to take that knowledge and digest it and bring it into our life.
Yes. Anybody want to add to what Santa just said? So if we're given the knowledge by consistent study of the Gita or any such scripture, any such higher value, then we will slowly digest it ourselves. But he's saying he's giving it because if we consistently look at something where, if we're looking at the Gita and it's the narrative between Arjuna and Krishna, Krishna's saying, I'll give it you because if you look at the Gita regularly enough and reflect on it, you'll get that wisdom that I'm giving you. So it's like an encouragement. I'll give you, suppose you want. That consistent reflection on the knowledge gives an inbuilt system of digestion to wisdom. If you're consistent only, if you're sporadic, nothing's going to happen. So that's the first topic. The purpose being to reach the self, nothing else. Only business is to reach the self. And the third topic, he proposes, why are we finding it difficult to reach the self? Because we're made up of these, our manifestation is made up of sattva, rajas, and tamas, thought textures, qualities, which manifest into our desires and actions. So we project this illusion because of that non-apprehension of the truth, the reality. We project an illusion, a misapprehension of our world. And that world's made up of qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas, which we're actually pursuing in the 18th chapter. Anybody wants to come on Monday. So sattva being the most refined quality, rajas being the frenzied quality of our activities and our thinking. It's more a worldly quality where you want to take out. Sattva being that refined quality where you're objective, poised, serene, calm mind. You execute your action with that precision. It's clear, objective. The focus is on something higher. It's not what I can get out of you, it's what I can put back. And tamas is that idle, the lowest quality. Tamas is that idle quality of inertia, indolence, ignorance, nothing's happening. So in a deluded state, the individual follows the world of those qualities. And at best, we raise ourselves from rajas to sattva. If we're in that spiritual quest, it's to raise ourselves to a mass of sattva, to trans-sattva, to get to realization. But the deluded keep going in the opposite direction, to be associated by things and beings, objects, by the world. Once you get that understanding, nothing can do it really, but getting to that truth within, then you start that journey inwards. Now you cater to all your things, that desires that you've got, just to get out, not for any other reason. Then he mentions 4 types of seekers, spiritual seekers. Who remembers those 4 types? What are those? Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a good morning. The sun is shining. Who are the 4 seekers, the spiritual seeker? What's the reason it's a good idea to acknowledge this for ourselves? Tim.
Well, it's a good idea to distinguish the 4 types so that you can identify which you're closest to.
Mm-hmm. And then, so what are the 4 types?
They're the wise, the distressed, people who seek knowledge for the sake of knowledge, and the seekers of wealth.
Mm-hmm. So in the name of being spiritual, people do all this. So only one is the real seeker, the jnani. The rest are a bit pseudo. It's because, why is it pseudo? Why do we say? Might we say that? So if you're seeking wealth or solace or so curious about knowledge, this type of knowledge, what's pseudo about it compared to the jnani?
Our only purpose is to seek the self, so the others are distractions.
Yeah. So you're seeking the higher only to get something, the desire ridden. So you're seeking the self, it's only to get to that truth. So all activities, all focuses are focused just to get to that truth. And he says in topic 5, the deluded seek and gain the fruit of action. So whatever you choose to seek and do in life, that's what you get. So if you choose to seek the world, all the objects and beings, all the things, it'll go on endlessly, but that's what you'll get. You'll gain those fruits. You'll gain all the material things. There's nothing wrong with material things. One ought to have whatever one wants. But if that's the focus, it misses the mark of that inward journey, spiritual journey. You can have both in spiritual well-being. There's no taboo in that, but it's the method of what you do, how you do it, where your focus is. So he says, those who seek finite goals will get that. If you seek the fruits, you'll get that of the worldly things. If you seek something else, you'll get that. If you seek the south, you get that. So it depends on what the direction of what you want is. Whatever you pursue, you'll be left to get on with. So if the wise one realizes just lila, a play. So strives, as Sam was just stating, strives to rise above the dvandvas, opposites. So then next time you feel a bit intolerant or reactive to something, pull yourself back and observe yourself and think, there's no point in that. Just rise above those opposites. If it's in the event, fine. If you can see it coming, better. If it's after the event, try and learn after the event. Oh, I got into that mess. Step yourself up out of the dvandvas, opposites. You're on a spiritual journey. The opposites, you get into it, deal with it, and you're out of it. Try not let it affect you. So the wise strive for liberation and free themselves. So we'd left off on, I think we were starting 29. We have a question, in fact. So on 28, he was mentioning open eye meditation. So a person who has no sins, no vasanas left, their pursuit is just, it's like everything is self. They're just going about their, whatever vasanas left, in the sense, vasana is the wrong word, whatever they have to pursue in their body, physical body, their emotions, they do it, but they're not actually affected by any of it. There's no agitation, no sins. So their preparation is done to get to the self. "29, before we go to 29. Question. Has anybody any question before we go to the question? Tim.
I'm often puzzled in myself why, when you pose questions to us, I find it so difficult to formulate it in the way you're expecting the answer. And I wonder if it's because when you look at these 4 categories of people, am I the distress? Like, am I just coming to your classes for solace and comfort? Is that why I find it difficult to formulate the answer to your question?
I don't know why, but there's one thing which is what we have in the academy is group discussions. And sometimes we spend a whole session just formulating the question. And it's a matter of training your thoughts and your mind to pick out things very quickly, to understand what is being said. So you could be, you can't put it as though you're that, this or the other. You may well be, or you may be just, you may be in one category or another. That's not the issue. It's the intellect, it's being tuned in, and it takes time for that to happen, to formulate questions and answers, or to actually think of the answer. Because to be honest, it needs each one of us, when we're coming to this class or when we're going away from this class or anything like this, that reflection of the knowledge is key, more than taking in the knowledge. It's more important to reflect on the knowledge and think about how to apply it, what it's saying. That takes time. So formulating an answer takes time, because you've got to understand what you're on, where you're at, where you're going, what you're actually picking up. And at the first couple of times of reading this type of knowledge, it's not, it's a little bit elusive. It comes and then it will go. So you think you know what you've been talking about, but it's actually gone. So maybe my questions might seem sometimes abstract, and admittedly, sometimes my formulation might be a little bit here and there. But if you're with the text and we're all discussing the same, if you've done that reflection, you'll find it far, far, far more easier. So it's just a matter of reflection. And actually, when you understand it in yourself, you'll be able to manifest it out. It's difficult, unless the question is not clear from the questioner. So it actually is an exercise in gaining clarity, in stretching your intellect. So that's why we ask questions in the class, and even if they're not clear, let's keep doing it. Let's keep attempting that. Don't just come here to sit pretty and hear the teacher talk. Actually stretch yourself a bit. It will do you the service. If you don't stretch yourself in this class, please take the opportunity when you leave the class in your morning study, take the opportunity to do that and reflect on the knowledge, because this is only to grow you in relation to your life and world. So it may be
in the absence of a group discussion, is the trick to just say, if you're looking at the 4 types of people who worship God, is it just to say, which am I this morning? Am I a seeker of wealth, or do I just love accumulating knowledge? Or am I the distressed? Or am I truly seeking the self, the wise? Is that the trick? Turn it back upon one own personality.
Certainly you can keep checking yourself, but once you start doing your consistent study and reflection, you won't need to check yourself. You'll know, hey, I'm actually this, so I need to up it for myself. But the fact that you're upping it is a fact that you've got the awareness to change. So it's not like one day you're that, one day you're that. You're an overall picture and combination of sattva, rajasic, and tamasic qualities. You know where your weak spots are if you examine yourself enough. You know where you get into certain things where you don't appreciate, but you're there. And you know what you've got to do to up it. But that comes from consistency of purpose. So the first question or the first verse that Krishna is offering, I'll give you, without a doubt, knowledge and wisdom. Nobody can give you wisdom. The text gives you sufficient knowledge for you to reflect on, which will give you wisdom. If you do it consistently, you get that digestion. So you may be one thing or another at a certain stage. You may recognize, I'm being a little bit too rajasic here, or tamasic, or I'm too ritualistic here, I'm after this, so I do this for that. But once you're on that spiritual journey, you can start adjusting it all because you recognized it. It doesn't keep, you're not figuring it out so much day to day. You've recognized certain things in yourself, that you're moving on them. Yes, you're figuring out some things, but you get a picture of you're going in a direction, all these traits you have, which you don't want to have, work on them through your study reflection. So you could be a bit of everything. You're working on it to alleviate yourself from some of those. You may be brought up in a very devotional household, ritualistic pujas and things like that, or going to do all the sort of those kind of things. You just brought up with that. One day you don't do it, you feel very upset. But when you've got knowledge, you don't care for one day you didn't do it, because you know your thoughts actually on the higher when you're doing some activity. So you may slowly not need that. But you may be very accustomed to those things every day. Oh, if I don't light a candle today, then I've not feel fulfilled or complete. Some people tell me this, I didn't do my puja today, I feel terrible, I didn't remember something higher. Well, if your focus is on the spiritual journey, it's always to keep it on something higher through everything you do. So there's no guilt feeling there. You do that just for your own punctuation. You don't do it, it's all right too. Where's your thoughts on the majority of the day? What's your purpose?
Thank you.
So the question, who's a Sakshi? Anyone? Who is a Sakshi? What is a Sakshi? Why do we need to be a Sakshi? Renu,
Witness.
a witness. So translation is witness. What do we mean by that? Nishi?
A Sakshi is one that witnesses the world but doesn't get affected or involved.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, because he doesn't identify with the mind or doesn't respond from the mind, he comes in direct contact with pure consciousness, his consciousness, the self.
Just focused on the self. Good. Anybody else? Sam?
Oh, I think Dharma had her hands up first, maybe.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's okay, Dharma.
I was just going to say the word objectivity comes into mind here. Just that there. Yeah, so I guess such a person is objective when it comes to the external world. So they don't get, as Nishi said, they don't get affected by the ups and downs. Because they're objective, and that keeps their mind calm and poised. And it's also because it's tuned with something higher. So they're not bound by the lower, they remain objective and witness.
Good. Dharma, you want to add something?
Just to add, I would think that if the person has attained the Sakshi Bhava status or state of mind, I would think that this person would be emotionally very stable, be able to comprehend a lot of difficulties as well as success in the same manner, and probably become a role model for others, particularly for the younger generation. Yeah.
Good. So those are the effects of a Sakshi. Those are the status effects. Good. Vidya.
I think the concept of Sakshi Bhav reminds us about the transient nature of our lives. It puts things into context of how transient our whole physical, mental bodies are. So then that aligns us to start looking at something which is more permanent, which is the self. So then it helps us, make that distinction of nitya and anitya. So if you are a practitioner of Sakshi Bhav, then we start, doing that mental discrimination in everything that we do. That in turn gives us the poise and the balance of not getting caught up in the dualities of the world.
Good. Nitya, Nitya, Viveka, Vivecha. Anytime I need to hear this, I'll ask Vidya. meaning what's permanent and what's impermanent. There's a constant discrimination going on. Is that permanent? Is that transient? Okay. You're constantly making that discrimination. This verse comes in the Bhagavad, which at some stage we will be doing. Nitya Anitya Vedaka Cha. Sakshi. Ash.
Can I ask a question on the question?
Hmm.
Are
Before
there-
you do that, anybody else has any question, any answer to this? I think we've covered. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Are there variations or different sakshis within us?
At different stages of your growth, you may have a capacity to be a sakshi with reference to the material things. You may be objective there, but yet when it comes to your emotions, you may not be able to be objective in your emotions because you're too entangled, wrapped up in it. But as you evolve yourself and gain that understanding, you'll be able to, you may have an objectivity to material things, but not physical things. You don't keep yourself physically clear. Or emotional is a little bit more subtler. You can be objective to being physical. You often see it. People are totally objective. They have brilliant physical bodies, totally fit, but emotionally they're not objective at all. So they're all messed up. Yeah, and it goes in different ways. So when you're backing it with something subtler, you're objective to that. The grosser value. So when you're focused on the self or that universal aspect of life, that have that objectivity, then everything else, even if you are not at the top of your game in that, your constant pursuit and striving is toward refinement of your material, your physical, your emotional, your intellectual, all in tune with the self. So there can be gradations that way. Yeah, but the idea is once you're hooked on the self, everything else is getting refined. If you're hooked on refinement of your emotions, only the physical and the materials with respect to that doesn't mean to say your intellect, your capacity to discriminate is clear.
So you could ideas. So you could be a sakshi from the mind, a sakshi from the intellect, and then you're looking to really become a sakshi from the ultimate.
That's a sakshi in truth. The rest are relative, but you can be objective. A sakshi means you're focused on the truth, the translation. But you may have objectivity in relation to all of the rest. It's your growth. So you may be focused on the truth and be refining your emotions, your physical, your material, your intellectual. You're refining your whole personality till it's not with that tamas, rajas, creating that environment of sattva, transattva. But you may have to go through all sorts of riffraff to get there. So best to focus on the most universal. So it speeds up the traffic, speeds up your game. If anybody's watching the Wimbledon, may the best sakshi win. Very difficult. You're the player. Get involved in the shot. But if you've got some bigger purpose, you play the game. The more difficult it gets, the better you will play. You can be one set down and you come on top from your objectivity. Sakshi Bhava. Let's go. Anybody? Let's go. 29. We've done Bhagavad chant.
Jara marana mokshaya mamashritya yadanti ye te brahma tad vidhu kritsnam adhyatmam karma chakilam.
Renu, if you could read the verse.
Those who strive for liberation from old age and death, taking refuge in me, they realize the whole, Brahman, Adhyatma, individual self, and all karma, action.
So taking refuge in me, the self, Atman, they gain liberation from all the traumas, all the goings on in life. They're no longer subject to the 5 metamorphoric changes of birth, growth, disease, decay, death. So an ordinary person is subject to all of those changes, going through all of those. So this one gets liberated from the chain of birth, death, all that's happening. Once you take refuge in me, me being the self, you're not affected by the rest of it. So one who realizes the whole Brahman, the Atman, the understands that it's just the senses playing. It's just the you just got to do the karma. Everything in life is just karma. Once you get to that stage of understanding, all your pursuits are just karma. So it's getting that attitude of understanding what is karma. We should be examining what is karma. Where are our thoughts lying when we pursue any activity? What deviates from our growth? So understanding our desires and what we need to execute in terms of action, that karma gets you liberated. So it's a continuous thought of being. You have a role to play in life. Each one of us have got individual roles to play. We've got different vocations, different sets of vasanas which manifest. Go on that stage, your world stage, and play your roles. You may have many roles to play. One minute you're a mother or a parent, a father, you're a daughter, you're an entrepreneur, you're a spiritual aspect. You may be a series of roles. You may be the daughter or son of somebody. You play that role at that time and leave it there and go to the next. Don't carry the roles over. In a play, if you watch a play, say we're watching Hamlet. Hamlet doesn't suddenly become Ophelia or the king. He is that role there and there. He doesn't get mixed up, though he might be the actor playing it. He doesn't bring his personality from home onto that stage. Therefore, when he leaves that stage, he doesn't take Hamlet back home and to his family start behaving like Hamlet. So there's roles that we play. A famous quote of Shakespeare, all the world's a stage. All men and women are mere players. We each have our exits and entrances. So we've got to remember that and strive in our karma. So one who strives in karma gets past that old age, that gets past those 5 metamorphoric changes, not dependent on that. Things happen in your life with your physical body, but you're not attached to it. You understand it's happening. You pitched up on something higher. Comedy, tragedy, whatever's happening. You've got to just play the role. Sadness comes, hatred comes. You just got to play the role. Happiness comes, love comes. You're just not to be affected by it. So you identify with it, but whilst you're identifying with your role, you've got your thought on something higher. Sakshi Bhav, not affected. Don't worry about what's going on in the world. Play your role. If you're playing, anybody think of a character? What character would you like to play in your life that you know? Who's your favorite character? Anyone? Dhamma.
Planet.
Sorry?
Captain Planet.
Captain Planet. Who's Captain Planet?
It's actually a animation back when I was a child. So Captain Planet is a combination of the elements we have. So each character in the comic has a ring, and then they sort of combine it together, and then we have a captain who sort of saves the world and the planet. Yeah.
Captain Planet. So you can be Captain Planet. Everybody can be whichever their favorite role is. But you can be Captain Planet for when you're playing that role. But when you go to your workplace, you're not going to say, I'm Captain Planet. You understand that's the role. You play Captain Planet when you're playing Captain Planet. When you go to playing research lady, that lady, woman, your role switches. So you just play their role and get out your thoughts on something higher. You might even be Captain Planet in your mind, thinking it, but you don't let everybody know you're Captain Planet when you're doing your research. You've got your thought on something higher always. Understanding that everybody's playing their part. You play yours the best you can. Identify with that higher, nothing else. Understand it's a play. Nothing more, nothing less. Understand how to relate to the elements, the senses. Play your role in the karma, in the value of yajna, adi yajna. Serve and sacrifice. See it all as a witness. The more you serve, the more you sacrifice, the more you're able to be a witness. The more you want something, the more difficult it becomes because it's clouded by your own desires. But when you serve, there's something higher in place. There's a smoother play. You can be more objective. It's more comfortable. It enables you more so. So all with the identification of the self, that wonderment of the self. Remember, each individual, each one of us has some light, something which sparks from within us. We've all got that compass going north to get to that truth. It's only when you recognize that, are you going to move on it? If you're not recognizing it, it's still there. But this is just helping you to recognize that light within us, which everybody's got in common the same. The person who excels is the one who recognizes it. That the same is in you as in me. So I don't care to make a difference with you. I came to make some unity with you. something unifying. So I have that feeling of camaraderie towards you. I have a good feeling of something bigger. I don't want to make the differences. I see something, the same universal principle in you as in me, as in the world, the flora, the fauna. It's all part of this Brahman. So you carry the consciousness throughout till you get there. When death is mentioning, it's a death of the physical body, not of the consciousness. If there's desire still there, the mind and intellect get carried over. So you keep going through birth and death, those processes of change, till you get to that consciousness, that awareness of truth. Such a person who's crossed over, is steadfast, realizes the self. Let's read the commentary.
The mass of humanity remains bound by the routine metamorphic changes of birth, growth, decay, disease, and death. Passing through these changes, they try to find peace and happiness in the external world by causing their body, mind, and intellect, by using their body, mind, and intellect. Their extrovertedness causes great mental disturbances, plunging them into delusion. A rare few seek the self within and liberate themselves from their self-inflicted sorrow and suffering. Among the seekers of liberation, fewer still gain the ultimate state of self-realization.
Continue.
The self-realized one has complete wisdom. He understands the terrestrial world, the transcendental reality, and their interrelationship. He knows the eternal, all-pervading Brahman, the supreme self, Atman, and all actions, karma, emanating from the self. Compare Brahman to the sun above and Atman to the rays emerging from it. When the rays fall on a reflecting medium, they produce a reflected sun. The reflected sun assumes the properties of the reflecting medium. A bright medium produces a bright reflection, a dull medium, a dull reflection, a distorted medium, a distorted reflection, and so on. Similarly, Brahman, appearing as Atman, functions through a heterogeneous variety of material equipments and produces a heterogeneous variety of beings. The beings execute their manifold activities. The self-realized soul has thus complete wisdom of Brahman Atman, and its role in the manifest world of beings and their actions.
Mm-hmm. So the self is the same in the Rama Tirtha as in the addict. But the manifestations are different. So one who identifies with that truth, refines themselves, sees the self in all. Let's continue.
Brahman serves like a company of actors, Atman like the actor. The world, the drama on the stage. Any intelligent person understands that the company and its actors have no connection with the actual happenings in the drama. They remain completely detached from whatever takes place on the stage. Likewise, Brahman Atman has nothing to do with the world and all the activities therein. An enlightened person, having identified with Atman, clearly understands this entire setup. He maintains a perfect detachment towards the world. William Shakespeare, in As You Like It, shares the same thought. All the world's a stage. and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances.
Mhm. There's a subtle pun on exits and entrances at the end, an indication that there's a continuation of life, birth and death. Otherwise, he might have put, as was pointed out by someone, he might have put entrances and exits. It's exits and entrances. Anyway, whoever sees it, sees it. Let's go, 30.
सादिभूतादिदैवं मां सादियज्ञं च ये विदु प्रयाणकालेऽपि च मां ते विदुर्युक्तचेतसः.
Dhamma, if you could read the verse.
Those who know me with Adi Bhuta, above elements, Adi Deva, above gods, and Adi Yajna, above sacrifice, even at the time of death, they steadfast in mind, know me.
Mhm. So once you're steadfast with your identification with the self, you understand Adi Bhutam, the elements, Adi Devam is referring to the sense of Adi Yajnam, referring to sacrifice of the self. You see it all as you pursue as a witness in relation to it. So how do you identify with the self we've been talking about, in fact? Each one has that light. So when you see any individual, you recognize that outwardly. Inwardly, you've got that focus on the self. So you understand in all the gross elements of fire, air, water, space, the world, etc., it's got that element of Brahman within it. It's made up of matter, but it's got that element of Brahman backing it. So in the subtler aspect, the mind, intellect, ego, you also see there's nothing but the Brahman. And you also understand we're in this play. So just as we understand the dreamer is nothing but the fibers of the waker's mind, you understand it's a dream when you wake up. As the waker now, we're nothing but, this is like an illusory dream, that we're actually this Brahman. So we're there to wake up out of this waking state. So the flora and fauna of everything is nothing but that self. So the consciousness is there all of the time. It's for us to tap into it and understand that we're that self in every activity, that awareness. So such a person who's steadfast in this yoga gets to that recognition, realizes the self. Let's read this verse.
This verse speaks of Brahman's manifested nature as Adi Bhuta, above elements, Adi Deva, above gods, and Adi Yajna, above sacrifice. Adi Bhuta refers to the 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth, known as Panchabhutas, the elements that constitute inert matter, the perishable world. Adi Deva refers to the senses, gods, as the word literally means. Gods in this context means the different life expressions of Brahman. When Brahman, Atman, functions through matter, it expresses as different powers. The gods and goddesses of the Hindu pantheon merely represent the powers and functions of the one supreme God, Brahman, in the manifest world. Adi Yajna refers to Atman, the Supreme Self, the core of living beings which enlivens in earth matter into living beings.
You're muted. Hawaji, you're muted.
Dhamma, I think I got frozen. Apologies. So we can just, Dhamma, had you finished the commentary?
I had one more paragraph left.
Okay. Let us complete today.
Okay. Matter is Brahman. Spirit is Brahman. Beings constituted of matter and spirit are all Brahman. The entire manifested world is Brahman and Brahman alone. They who know this relationship between the unmanifest Brahman and the manifested world, they know the ultimate reality. Ye vidu, te vidu. Those who know, they know. Just as a scientist knows that ice is H2O, water is H2O, and vapor is H2O, these knowers of reality maintain the same vision even after their death. Their minds have merged in with the reality, have become one with Brahman. Their experience of Brahman is permanent, everlasting, eternal.
So essentially when he's saying of death, it's not necessarily the physical death, it's the death of the ego. So that we might take it as sometimes misconstrued it as physical death, but it's a death of the ego. Such a person steadfastly realizes the self. Let's chant the last verse and then the first.
Om Tat Sad iti Shri Bhagavad Gita Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Jnana Vijnana Yogo Nama Saptamodhyayaha.
Now in the tradition to show we are still continuing and with humility, we chant the first verse.
You want to chant the translation of the
Yes,
Tim?
let's do. Tim, if you'd like to do the translation.
That is real. Thus, in the Upanishads of the glorious Bhagavad Gita, the science of the eternal, the scripture of yoga, the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, ends the 7th chapter entitled The Yoga of Knowledge and Wisdom.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Maya Sattamana पार्थ योगं युञ्जन्मदाश्रयः असंशयं समग्रं मां यथा ज्ञास्यसि तच्छृणु.
We'll be starting chapter 8 next week. Please have a look at the summary